have the privilege and pleasure of introducing our speakers today. Anita Conway, President and CEO of Proven Management, is the visionary behind this award-winning real estate and facility management firm. As an adept leader, she has successfully trained her 102 employees on navigating through stringent protocols and politically charged red tape to get the job done on time and on budget. Testament to the company's success is reflected in their high-profile clients, which includes some of the world's most notable agencies, White House, FBI, GSA, among others. In 2020, Anita was named Washington Bureau Business Journal Minority Business Leader, as well as she received the Enterprising Women of the Year Award. In 2018, Anita was named SBA Small Business Person of the Year. In 2015, American Express Open in Procurement named her Woman Contractor of the Year. Anita successfully marries her passion for entrepreneurship, leadership development, and motivational speaking to shift the paradigm for single moms who aspire to reach their highest potential through her nonprofit, the Conway Foundation. However, her greatest achievement entailed building a legacy for her two adult daughters who are intricately involved in a proven solution that works. Also joining us is Janice Mathis, Esquire. She's the Executive Director of the National Council of Negro Women in Washington, D.C. Janice was appointed Executive Director of NCNW in 2016. NCNW was founded in 1935 by Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. It is an affiliation of 32 national women's organizations, 200 campus and community-based sections, with total membership of reaching more than 2 million women and men. The mission of NCNW is to lead, advocate for, and empower women of African descent, their families, and their communities. Janice is responsible for implementing that mission for a host of programs and activities that she conceptualizes and leads. NCNW's programs are grounded in a foundation known as for the Future: STEAM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, education, health, entrepreneurship, and civic engagement. Programs initiated during her tenure include Hungry for Education, Millennial Entrepreneurs, Women's Economic Empowerment, and Empowerment for Girls in Tech. Prior to joining NCNW, Janice was General Counsel and Vice President of Reverend Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition, a citizenship education fund, where she spearheaded civil rights and diversity initiatives with many Fortune 500 firms. She's a former member of the Georgia Power Company Diversity Advisory Council and Coca-Cola Supplier Diversity Council. In 2015, she led a successful effort of diverse contractors, a $3 billion state-funded transportation project in Georgia. Janice and her sister, Davida Mathis, host Sisters-in-Law on News and Talk 1380 WAOK, weekly legal advice program, and they blog at sistersinlaw.blogspot.com. She is a recipient of numerous awards and is included in several editions of Most Influential Blacks in Atlanta. In 2009, she was named one of the 25 most influential women in Atlanta by Rolling Out magazine and received the Fannie Lou Hamer Award from UFCW. Janice earned a Bachelor of Arts degrees in both economics and public policy studies at Duke University in only 3 years, and was a recipient of the prestigious Angier Dole Duke Scholarship. She's also studied British politics and history at Oxford University in England and earned a Juris Doctor from the Lumpkin School of Law at the University of Georgia in Athens. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. I'm so excited about this conversation because I do believe the leadership expertise that both of you bring to us today is really going to help a lot of Black women entrepreneurs as well as men entrepreneurs, but we really want to focus on women today in terms of helping them really navigate this pandemic, navigate being able to move their businesses forward, and I'm so interested in hearing your thoughts on the matter today. So with that, I'm going to start first with you, Danita, if you don't mind.
I don't.
In these tough times, it's important to take a breath, step back a minute, and reevaluate how best to move forward. Can you describe a high point of what your company was doing prior to COVID-19, and then what came to a standstill?
Absolutely. First, again, thank you for allowing me to come here. I think talking about leadership is a great way to start my week. One of the things that I think was really going well for us is that we had a great momentum. We had started 2020 off. Our forecast for 2019 into 2020 was on point. But right at COVID, all of the government contracting initiatives that I was working on, because a lot of them included space and furniture and moving people, all came to a stop. It goes, if people are in the building, we don't have a need to redo the furniture. If people are going to come back to the same spaces, we don't have a need to redecorate. So from that perspective, we lost, or let me not say lost, we're going to say we had to halt the activities that we already had, which included not only halting what we were working on, but halting future activities as well.
So Janice, as Executive Director of the National Council of Negro Women, you're serving Black women entrepreneurs daily. As a leader, what were the initial things that you needed to tackle as a nonprofit serving Black women?
Well, there were several things. I think the one that was the most urgent was that we get the word out about the government assistance that was going to be available to people, to make sure that they were aware of it and were positioned to take advantage of it, to make sure we understood the provisions ourselves. So there was a lot of midnight oil burned looking at PPP and some of the proposals and trying to help shape them, frankly, in dealing with members of the CBC and other members of Congress. So that was the first thought. Then, of course, our own employees. We had a team that as of March 13th, all of a sudden our office operations stopped and we went to work from home. I haven't been back to work in the office since the middle of March. Well, what does that entail? That means, do your colleagues have the equipment they need to continue to work from home? I'd always done my midnight hours here at the house. So I had a robust setup of computer and printer and all the things that I might need to do my job from home, but I had to make sure that my colleagues had the same kind of support. And then what kind of policies would we implement about the building? You know, 633 Pennsylvania Avenue is kind of a crossroads. Everybody considers it home, and we agree with that. Right. But who could we let safely into the building? Would we continue to do things like the regular maintenance? And so there was all that logistical stuff to attend to. And then we had on the books several projects that became impossible or much more difficult. We couldn't very well do an HBCU tour of a dozen schools unless we were prepared to do it virtually. And at the time we were not, so we sort of shelved that until next year. So there were all kinds of decisions, and the thing that we had to keep in mind is that they all needed to be made at once. Then we learned that we were in a pandemic, and it wasn't long after that that the health disparities that we knew existed were exposed statistically. And that created a whole other wave of work that needed to be done. So it's been an interesting, what do the Chinese say? May you live in interesting times.
That's right.
This has certainly been an interesting time.
Absolutely. And so, feel free to piggyback on that, Danita, because I wanted to run into the idea as I'm listening to both of you. Janice in a historic building, you actually moving people from building to building. What leadership skills initially had to kick in for you as you're trying to navigate all of this really chaos at the end of the day?
I think the very first one I can think is control. Honestly, as a leader, I had to be in control of my emotions. I had to instill confidence in my team because they were looking at me to go, what's next? What's going to happen? So the first thing that I had to do was just gather my thoughts and go, okay, we've been preparing for this forever. So we're already doing a lot of telework, but there's a difference when you're doing telework because you want to versus telework because you have to. There's a difference when people are having now children home. So a lot of our employees were used to sending their children to school and being able to accomplish their work because as project managers, we do work all the time. So my first thought was, let me pull myself together. Let them understand that we're going to be just fine, and let me lead them and be available to them 24/7. So if they needed to work at 2:00 in the morning because it just suited their needs, I didn't make it about myself. So they had that leader. And then the second thing that I did was I really did become empathetic, understanding that although my children are grown children, so I didn't have to mind them while they were in school and trying to learn, that I wanted to make sure that I understood that my employees weren't necessarily going through the same situation, that they needed someone that was going to be there, that could pick up the ball for them, that can step in for them, again, that can just coach them through it. I earned a title called Chief Empathetic Officer during this time because I had to recognize that people were going to need a different level of just understanding and caring. We also implemented an everyday meeting now at 8:30 in the morning. We all get on the line and we just check pulse. How are you doing? What are some of the things that you need to do to be comfortable? I would ping in on someone on their text message or on Teams and say, why don't you get up and go do some work? I kind of see that you've been online, so go take a walk. Go do something fun. So a lot of my team really looked for me to be the pillar of strength because they didn't know which direction to go. And I was lucky enough to have gone through some situations just working in the government where things changed a little bit quickly than we expected to. And this was one of the cases.
I think I agree with a lot of what you've said, Danita. I think the word that came to my mind, which is similar to control, was focus. That you couldn't afford to be scattered. You had to be singular in your focus in terms of prioritizing what has to be done today, and then what has to be done tomorrow, and what needs to be done by the end of the week. It forced a level of discipline and focus and not getting distracted and not becoming emotional, because a lot of what we saw was emotional, especially after we got into the sort of racial part of it. It was hard not to be distracted, especially if you've been a civil rights organizer for a long time. You had to think about, yes, I know you want to go to Lafayette Square and carry signs, but what you really need to do today is make sure that everybody's been able to communicate and that we know what meetings we've got scheduled and what are we doing about next week's webinar. So it was that sort of discipline. And I think when our colleagues saw Dr. Cole and me and Crystal, who's our Chief Administrative Officer, working as a team, we got this. We got y'all, we got this. Together, everyone accomplishes more. It may sound trite, but it's true. I've seen that our stay-at-home period has been very successful. I think I would agree, and I think our colleagues would agree. The other thing that was important was that we stay in touch with our members. So a lot of days, I would just sit and make half a dozen phone calls to members, and they'd say, who did you say this was? Don't you work at that office? And you're calling, did I do something? So no, we're just checking in, want to make sure you're all right. And there were times when we did discover needs that we weren't aware of. And so we set up a COVID relief fund in the name of NCNW. I called a lady one day and she said, well, I'm doing fine, except I live on the 7th floor and the elevator's not working and I can't get downstairs to get my laundry done. Well, I got on the internet and I found a service that would pick up the laundry and take it and do it and bring it back folded and nice and clean. She was very grateful. That was not a part of my job description, but sometimes the empathy needs to come through to remind yourself that you're human and not a machine, but also to carry out the mission. So it was focus, but it was also flexibility.
You know, one of the things I love about Black women and hearing both of you talk, just speak about this experience is the ability to drop what we're doing and serve the need of someone else, right? It's not, Janice, it's not your job to necessarily find somebody to help this woman, but that's what we do, right? It doesn't matter what the title is or what the position is. this is what needs to happen in order to help not only me, but help others move forward. So in thinking about that, talking about some of those immediate challenges, I do want to really check in with you now in this question in particular, because there are demonstrations still going on. There are, all of us are really aligned in how we want to support, and that support might look differently. I may not necessarily be marching, but the work that I'm doing behind the scenes may help facilitate. What are some of those challenges that you all are seeing, and how are you solving some of those? And how are you doing during this time? But particularly the work that you do, Janice, it's got to be, it's your life's work, number one, but number two, you're sitting in Washington, D.C., where there's lots of things happening, and you're sitting not too far away from now Black Lives Matter Plaza.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about how you're feeling, and Danita, you the same.
I'm feeling optimistic. Certainly the pandemic is a sobering prospect. There's no cure, there's no treatment, there's no vaccine. That's sobering, especially if you're approaching retirement age as I am. I'm in the category of people who have to be especially careful about their health. And so that's sobering, but then you look back over your life and you gather strength from the things that you've been challenged by. And yeah, there was a great recession back in 2008. And we counseled hundreds of people about mortgage modifications and how to retain the interest in their homes that they'd accumulated over years. And somehow we got through it. You look back to 68 and Dr. King got shot, and we thought the world was coming to an end and the Democratic Party was in shambles. But somehow you make it through. And I think every time you go through one of those challenging 911, you go through those periods and you come out the other side and you look back and say, oh yeah, well, we managed. Faith is a big part of it. I don't know how people manage who attempt to do it without believing in something larger than themselves. But I think the growth comes from the experience. Mm-hmm. And if you can, I was at Spelman's campus broadcasting that radio show the night that Mr. Trump was elected. And talking to undergraduates was probably the best place I could have been that night to help them think about their disappointment, and that the future is not all one-sided. There's a future. You're young, you're gifted, you're Black, you're about to graduate from Spelman College. It doesn't get much better than that. So don't be weary. Be patient. This too shall pass. It sounds trite, but those are the kinds of things that get you through. And this is not the last one. There'll be others.
Mm-hmm. And I would have to agree with Ms. Janice. I think the idea of succeeding always comes in situations, right? So what I told my entire team, and anybody listen, when you come out of COVID, out of this time, we would have gotten stronger in some area. Maybe we would have learned a little bit better how to work with our finances. Maybe we learn a little bit better how to do our resume, because now we have to be more exploratory in things that we can do to create income and wealth inside of our own households. You know, the nice part about it is we're also learning how to teach our children. So I think part of, I too am in Washington, D.C., so part of the hard part is watching what's going on around us, and simultaneously being very proud of what's going on with Black Lives Matter Plaza, and trying to convince both the generations that are retiring and the generations that are coming in that this is a situation that we will go through, but we will persevere out of it. And part of that is just pushing through. I can't think of anybody who's accomplished something that didn't have to go through a situation, but we use it for our benefit, and then we come out, just brighter and happier. I've watched talking to my young 22-year-old interns and explaining to them, are you going to furlough me? No, I'm not going to furlough you. We're going to figure out a way for you all to be able to sustain. And if I do furlough you, because this is where we end up going, then this is what I want you to be able to do to come out on the other side of it. So I would say for me and anybody around me, it's been different. And it's different because it impacts everywhere. You know, you see, I was a part of 9/11 and watching what was going on there. So you see that impacts, but it was a smaller portfolio of people who were directly impacted. In this pandemic, it's a bunch of us being impacted. It's the world.
Mhm.
So navigating through this is certainly different than the 1920s influenza, right? Because I wasn't alive to see that. So just trying to figure it out one day at a time, and setting a playbook so that the next time something comes up, we'll be able to handle it, because we can say we survived 2020, so we can survive this.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And I do think you discover new strengths. We have been sort of dabbling around in webinars a couple times a month, but after the pandemic hit and we could not work directly with our members, then we were forced to become webinar experts. We were doing COVID workshop almost every week,
Mhm.
and we're still doing them.
Mhm.
It's a whole new line of business. Nobody knew what COVID was or how that would work, but it has given us a new set of skills and abilities that we did not have. And so that's a silver lining in the cloud, the activism of the Black Lives Matter. And then for NCNW, intergenerational communication is very important. Our members run the gamut from 12-year-olds, seventh graders, to octogenarians who are still very active and healthy and engaged in their careers and their lives. But to be able to speak to that whole spectrum, that whole continuum of folk, and to provide the messages and the reassurance and the stability that the organization needed to just keep on the path towards success was challenging, but also exhilarating at the same time.
Yeah, I would agree. I knew we've gone through similar changes. I think what's been interesting is the ability to be nimble, right, and flexible in this environment has really been critical. And if you are not an out of the box thinker, now's the time to be that. You got to really kind of figure it out. Because while there are new opportunities presented, you have to be mindful of what that impact is on everybody around you. And so with that, I want to talk to Danita a little bit about, you know, what's been great here is the juxtaposition between a nonprofit entity like NCNW and a for-profit business like Proven Management. And I wanted to have both your perspectives because I think the leadership element is similar across both, but they obviously operate a little bit differently. So, Danita, I want to give you a chance to really talk about, as an entrepreneur, there had to be now some bright idea that came to you for all of this, right? The one thing about this pandemic right now is we do have an opportunity to sit down and think in probably ways we haven't had before, with a little bit of peace and quiet, with a little bit of solemnity around it. So for you, tell me about that bright idea moment that came to you and helped you really pivot your business model.
You know what, I like to say I had a few. You know, it's as you said, I've had a lot of solidarity that I didn't have before. I couldn't just wait. The phone rang constantly. So it had to be about 2 months ago. So maybe about 2 weeks into COVID, I realized that what we had was an opportunity for my entire team to begin teleworking on a consistent basis, which would give my team better quality of life. So they'll be able to stay at home a little bit more. And it will also allow me to expand my product line, because my team members would not be spending the 2 hours of commuting time getting back and forth from the suburbs into the Washington, D.C. office. And what was nice about that, when I shared it with my team, was like, you would really consider that? You are old model. You believe that we needed to work inside of the office for that productivity and for that camaraderie. And I said, yeah, but we've been able to do it, you know, from this point on. We're going to have to do it until we can't figure it out. I mean, until they figure it out. But at the same time, we've been able to do it so successfully. Why not continue that model? You know, we also went in and it's been nice because we've been able to develop new platforms to talk to our clients. And what's been nice about that is, again, you feel like you have to have this face-to-face interaction. We figured out how to do 3D videos and send it to our clients so they can walk the spaces and not feel like they have to be there, that we can go and do it for them. So that one moment that came to me, amongst others, was the beginning of, I think we can do this a lot easier than what we've done it before. I think we can do it a lot smarter. And I think I can begin to give back the quality of life to my team members that they might have lost before the pandemic.
So I want to have an opportunity to just share with folks a little bit about your business. We're going to bring up a slide now that talks about who Proven is, and just go through a little bit of your chronology, and then what your leadership model looks like, what your core message, competencies, the skills that are required around that. So just run us through Proven for a little bit, so we can get an idea of why it was really critical for you to be able to pivot in the way that you did.
Well, I absolutely love talking about Proven Management. We were established in 2008. I established it myself with the basis of, I wanted to apply task and people. So I wanted to bring the two together. I felt in a lot of instances, there was a lot of leadership that focused on tasks and not so much human dynamic. So I started a firm that does real estate and facility management. And what that does is I help people figure out space planning. So if you have an office space and you need to put 10 people inside of it, what amount of square feet do you need to be able to accomplish that? Then we go out and help people furnish the property. We also help people move into the property. So once we figured out what your space is going to look like, we put furniture into your space, then we help move people in. Originally, when I started it in 2008, though, we were singular. We were only moving people into the space. But through the years, I realized that we offer a turnkey solution, which, and part of our turnkey solution is our leadership, right? So since we're offering a turnkey solution and we're providing on-site supervision, direction, counsel, subject matter expertise, our clients felt it valuable for us to take it from beginning to end. So we started in 2008, and then here we are in 2020, and we've offered so many other core competencies, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit. What made us what made us able to pivot was really the idea of hiring people that were very similar to me, but very different. Every employee that works for me has to want to be what I call an entrepreneur. Someone who is leadership inside of their core. Someone who is okay with going on to a place and saying, this is what I want, this is what I want to do. And they've done that for since 2002, bare minimum with me. So they come in with a decade of experience, especially my top leadership. And they work projects such as the Pentagon Renovation Office, where we came in and helped with the move management of over 40,000 people in and out of the Pentagon. And imagine what that was like after 9/11, right? Like that was a pretty robust effort. And then in 2008, when I actually started my firm, that's when we came in, we added a little bit more services. I got a little bit more in depth about what I wanted to do. And I decided that I wanted to have very turnkey evolution. And I picked up clients such as the White House and the FBI and the Social Security Administration and the General Services Administration. I mean, it's been phenomenal. One of my favorite clients is Baltimore Gas and Electric, which is the Exelon Corporation. And what I love about them is that if you're not a leader, you don't belong. So they actually make sure that everybody on that job site, from their contractors to their employees, are actually taking responsibility and accountability for what they do every day. I love it. It is the best post-temple education I could ever get, is working. They challenge me, and they challenge me as a leader. So, and then 2008, we continued to expand, and we decided to offer even more core services. And in 2020, we're adding even more now post-COVID, right? So now that COVID is here, and I keep mentioning that because that was a pivotal point in our organization. Mm-hmm. It was a point where leadership was tested. It was a point where employees' dedication was tested. It's once said that if you don't want to work hard, you don't want to work for Proven. And inside of COVID, having to work from home, we're really a 24/7 operation because we are project management. So our phones ring all the time. They start at 4 o'clock in the morning, they end at 2 a.m. in the morning. And there's some exaggeration with that, but the heart is what stays running. So because we want to be there for our clients, we stay open, if you will, 24/7, just in case we need us. And when people don't have a break, when they can't say, oh, I can't get that email because I'm on the road, I'm driving, and they no longer have that ability with working from home, they had to pivot and they had to decide, this is something that I want to do. So it was really nice watching where we've come from to where we've gone and where we sit today. It's really nice to watch all of the things that we offer, that our team members are coming in and saying, we're doing IT coordination now. We didn't really do IT before, but after COVID, and we're able to get all of our IT up and running really quickly. And we were able to get over 20-something employee computers sent out, IT set up, everything done within less than a week. Our clients started to ask us to do the same thing. So what's been really the best part about owning Proven Management and leading Proven Management are the people, though. You ask me, what is it that they need? They need a desire to be a change, right? So part of what we do, from program management to change management to interior to design to furniture decor, all of these things are changes. So our team, part of what they have to be able to have is an architectural or interior design degree. They have to want to make a change, and most importantly, they have to want to lead.
I think that's so interesting what you just said there, because and Janice, you mentioned the same thing, bringing in a new skill set, right? So for Danita, you talked about the IT coordination piece that you may not have thought about until you had to be in this situation. I think, Janice, you talked a little bit about the webinar infrastructure. So thinking about that for both of you, and Janice, I'll start with you first. What, in terms of leadership, what did you have to do? What was your thought process in making some of these, really, again, I'm going to call them out of the box thinking decisions? What leadership skills did you tap into to be able to be that flexible and to be that nimble, and understand that your world was changing, what your employees needed was changing, and what your constituents needed was changing? What did you tap in to make that happen?
I think the ability to focus that I've already talked about, but in addition to that is an ability to sort of look a little bit ahead to see where the road might be taking you. I'm not so much an originator as I am maybe a synthesizer. I'll observe facts. Here I could see that, okay, we're not going to be coming to the office. NCNW is structured in a very unique way. We've got local sections of chapters, 300 of them, 80 of them on college campuses, and all of a sudden, my college campus sections are shut down because the institutions where they are housed are shut down. So I've got about 5,000 college students who will have no NCNW programming if I don't think of something pretty quick. And so what do? Okay, you got a situation, what's possible given, you know what your limitations are, what your boundaries are, but given that, what's still possible? That's where imagination and Dr. Lowry used to tell me guts come in, because you have to be courageous enough. People don't generally like change. And so we said, okay, well, instead of going to all these college campuses, we're going to have something like a virtual graduation ceremony for all 200 and something of our graduates this year, and send them gifts. Well, we can't really send them gifts, but there must be some kind of e-card that's online, just some kind of digital gift card. There must be another way to do it. And so you come up with something, and lo and behold, it seems to work. So I think flexibility, imagination, creativity, not being willing to take the first no as an answer, keep looking for, there must be 9 ways to skin a cat. There must be another way to get this done if that's the goal. And then with the structure of NCNW, you've got your community members who make up a large part of our webinar audiences. But this is our 85th anniversary year. We've got people who've been members of NCNW 50 years. And every other year they convene in Washington, D.C. and hang out with each other and elect officers and do all that is involved in a convention. Well, you're not going to do that in 2020. So we start talking about, well, we think we're going to have a digital convention, a virtual convention for 2,000 people. Some of my board members, okay, is that, so you've got to think about how to walk people through change and innovation in ways that don't minimize their contribution to the organization over decades. Because you could break it up, you could tear it apart. If you go in like a bull in a china shop and insist that you got the answer, you got to be willing to listen to others and gather their opinions. They may know things that you haven't thought about. I wish I could give you a straight prescription, but it's a lot of things at once. It's keeping a lot of balls up in the air at one time.
No, I think that that's right. I think there isn't a one, for this, there is no one shop, one stop fits all premise. There's the need to try different things. I think the listening piece is important. And I think the other side of it is really watching people step up. Danita, do you see that with your employees, people stepping up a little bit more than they might have in their sort of traditional role? What do you see happening there? And how do you encourage that as a leader?
I think it's been 50-50. So there's been the ones, as Ms. Mathis has said before, where they were just afraid. They were afraid of change, right? So they're the ones that we had to encourage. It's okay. It's okay to make a mistake, because they were so used to the face-to-face interaction that they just didn't know which way to put their feet. And then you saw the other ones that just found that they had way more free time on their hands than they ever had before. And they wanted to see their life take a different spin. And it goes back to, when you come out of this, you should be stronger. So we really had both. The way that we encourage it is simple. We really talk to them all the time and we challenge them. So my thought is, everybody's forward thinking. Let's come up with something different. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about a business. So I'll give you an example. My daughter works for me, and she's a younger person working in the organization. And so I challenged her to do something. Well, she didn't have all the professional skill sets. So she decided to be the chef of the company now. So she got into this video call and go, we now have a chef at Proven Management. I'm like, a chef? When did we take up, this? And she goes, I've decided to give new recipes to everybody on the call, because that's what I want to give back, because people don't have recipes and they're cooking at home all the time. So they're spending their wills. And I really thought that was innovative. It didn't have anything to do with what we did for the business. It had something to do with what we do in life. And then she took that and then she inspired everybody else to do it. I thought of your social media, Ms. Danita. I want to give you that. So from my company standpoint, again, it's been really 50-50. And to help our employees, we've been very encouraging. We've encouraged them to read books. We bought books for them to say, hey, look, we don't want you to fund it, but we want you to have something, pick any topic that you're interested in, be it today or tomorrow. And let's get reading so you can get stronger and more resilient to what's going on right now. So, and for me to lead people through this, I too would agree, it really did take focus. It took for me to turn the attention from myself to everybody else so that I could prop them up so they had all the tools and I can focus on what I thought they needed before they even saw it coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that professional development piece that you're talking about is really critical. If you don't do it now, when do you do it, right? When you have that opportunity to really focus on it. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, Janice, because I want to have you put on your attorney hat for me. as USBC has done, NCNW has done the same thing in terms of really trying to stay ahead of all of these changes relative to PPP and the funding that's come out. As you know, from the very beginning, there was changes like 10 times a day to the legislation, right? And every time we go out, we would have to either make sure that we were on top of what the new change was going to be, make sure we were able to implement that and share that in the right way with all of our members and with business owners. Tell me a little bit about these new changes that are happening. I think they came down last week. We did put something on our site, but I would love for you to have the opportunity to share your thoughts on it in light of the fact that a lot of businesses in those first 6 weeks of PPP that really needed funding didn't get it.
Right.
A lot of them that needed it probably had 1099 contractors as opposed to employees, which limited their ability to do it, no less the work, still limit their ability to take advantage of it. And some people who did have employees, this has not been a turnkey piece, right? We're phase 1, phase 2. I'm sitting in North Carolina. They're talking about, we're in phase 2 right now. We're talking about going back to phase 1 because of the increases in the infection rate. So what were your thoughts about these revisions in and of themselves? What impact do you think they'll have now on businesses that should try to get into the pipeline now, since it's slowed down some, to see if they're able to get some funding for their businesses?
Yeah, let me just, some of the thoughts that I had. One, I was pleasantly surprised at the speed at which the Congress did act. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a lesson learned from 2008, 2009, where the reaction was a little slow and we fed more of the treetops and less of the grassroots. And that didn't turn out to be such a good solution in the long run. The banks, I think, thought that was a good idea. But then when they ended up in the real estate business, having repossessed so many single family homes, they started to rethink that maybe funding people who actually have to pay bills every month might be a better path. And so you did see a little bit of a different approach this time, that we're going to give money to folk who are operating small businesses. Now, the big flaw in that was that you had to go to your own banker in order to qualify for PPP. Some of us don't have banking relationships. Some small businesses run their businesses based on their PayPal account, or where you don't have a face-to-face relationship with your banker. So we needed something to go back and say, wait a minute, you don't necessarily have to go to your own banker. I thought that was important. Then we get into this 8 weeks. I think we were overly optimistic about our ability to stem the spread of the pandemic. And surely in 8, we're Americans, right? In 8 weeks, we can do anything. Well, it became apparent pretty quickly that there wasn't enough money in the first round because it essentially was gone the same weekend that it was released. And then that 8 weeks was too short a period of time to expect people to pay back the funds that they got through PPE before they, or that the funds would, because it would not be convertible back to a grant, it would remain a loan that had to be repaid. So now you see the Congress, I think it was just last week, passing something that's got some provision, and they lowered the threshold for getting forgiveness of the grant, of the loan, from 75% spent on payroll expenses down to 60%. But that left a big gaping question. Frankly, I learned more about it from your blog than any place else.
Oh, thank you.
that it should not be interpreted as an either or cliff. That even if you don't spend 60% on payroll expenses, you ought to be able to get forgiveness pro rata for the portion that you did spend. So the law seems to be evolving and getting slightly better as it goes along. We were real concerned, not on the PPP side, but on the PPE, which was for individuals, that you had to have a bank account, again, to get your money quickly.
Right.
And we know that African Americans and lower income folk lead those who are unbanked or underbanked. So we did put out some material to the civil rights community and to the Treasury Department to get some reconsideration. Got a little bit of success there. But it is, as you know, not a static target.
Mm-mm.
I suspect that about October, November, we'll be back at the table again talking about further revisions to the law. So I think the lesson in it is to try to stay abreast. You know, at congress.gov or whatever you use, US Black Chamber website, whatever you use to stay abreast. This is a time where you really have to keep your finger on the pulse because it changes daily. I mean, the House has a big bill that hasn't been considered by the Senate yet, that would give additional relief. Will it get passed? And then you got folk on the other side saying, well, hold on, wait a minute. Let's see how what we've already done works. We saw some pretty good employment numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was okay, we're gonna hold on and wait and see. Then the stock market starts to look shaky. And you're back at the table saying, we've got to keep this thing afloat. Because what we don't want is for the economy to seize up and nobody can buy anything or borrow anything or spend anything. That would not be good. But key one is this started out a health pandemic and it's still a health pandemic. And frankly, until we get a handle on the health aspect, the economic dislocation is going to persist.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it is health first. There are lots of things that disproportionately impact our community. The death rate in our community has been higher than anyone else's across the nation.
2 to 3 times what the white death rate is.
Absolutely. And so and there's not sort of this understanding. I know there was a lot of going back and forth last week about people not wanting to go back to work, right? Because they're getting their unemployment. And so because it's a little bit higher than might be earning in a position that they have, they're thinking about staying home. Well, but I think it goes beyond that. I think if you have been impacted by this in a very negative way, where someone, you've lost a loved one, or you've had to take care of a loved one, that really brings in a whole nother dimension to this. And so it's hard to be that cavalier, just say people don't want to go back. I think, with proven management, and I think with NCNW as well, you've had the opportunity to keep your people intact and keep on board and not have to have them navigate those pieces. But it is important for other businesses and leaders that are out there to really think about the broader impact. It might not be happening to you, but it could be happening to other people in a way you would have never imagined.
There's a really good example of what you're talking about. I started to get aggravated and then incensed every time I heard a politician talking about we're going to open up our economy.
Mm-hmm.
Only 20% of African Americans have jobs that they can do from home. So that meant that 80% of us who are employed were still going about we were still driving buses and trains, still delivering pizzas, still going to hospitals as nurses and other frontline workers. My mailman didn't miss a day coming here.
Mm-hmm.
My garbage gets picked up every Thursday morning, all African American men. And so to say, we need to open up the economy. Well, 80% of African Americans have been going to work every day, so some of us could have the luxury of staying at home. And I think that forces us in the longer term to have a serious conversation about who and what brings value to this economy. It's not just folk like me who sit at computers all day and churn out memos. It's the people who have to actually get up and put on hazmat clothes and go out into this COVID-infested air and be able to keep their wits about them as they do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I could do it. And I think it begs for a restructuring of how we think about collective bargaining, for example, and wages, and what does a minimum wage get you? And is there anything minimum about the people who come to pick up the refuse every week? There are some longer term implications for how this economy is structured. Just like you hear calls for restructuring the police, you can't have the most severe income inequality since the 1920s go through a pandemic and expect the lowest paid workers to do the hardest work and accept the most exposure with the least compensation. There's something fundamental, and as your generation and younger comes into leadership, these are some of the issues that we'll be grappling with. We won't ever go back to pre-pandemic doing business.
No.
We don't know all the ways that the world will change, because unlike 911, as somebody already said, it wasn't just one thing. This is education and health and business and economics and every aspect of our life, food delivery, every aspect of our lives has been touched by this, and we will deal with these effects for decades to come.
Yeah, and I think that's this conversation about leadership goes beyond what you might be doing in your day-to-day, because as you know, you've got to be thinking future forward. You got to be thinking about what are the implications going down the road across the environment, across the economy, across health, across race, across, I mean, there's so many things that this has touched in a way that we've not seen before. So when I have people thinking about leadership, that's why I'm glad I have the two of you here, because this is a new lens on leadership in a way that we've not seen before. And so, Danita, I wanted to ask you, when you talk to business owners, I know you talked a little bit about the foundation that you have. When you're talking to business owners, we know clearly there are a few different plays, right? There's an e-commerce move that needs to happen in some respects in order for people to get their products online, because we're all home. I know I'm still shopping. So, but we've got to figure out, right, how we help our businesses do that. What investments did you have to make in your business that you didn't think about at the beginning of the year? And how has that paid off for you? And how are you advising businesses that you're working with every day on how to take those steps?
Understood. Before I answer that question, allow me to go back 1 second.
Sure, absolutely.
And talk a little bit about the PPP. So Proven Management didn't have all employees that stayed. Mm-hmm. There were some employees that came, and these are guys that are doing the physical labor in some of the buildings that says, I don't want to be exposed. Right. So I'm going to resign so that I can get unemployment because I don't want to be exposed. And so that was a very big challenge that we had to overcome too, because I went back and said, well, maybe some of these guys need hazard pay. Like maybe we should change a little thing. So that I wanted to put that out, because I think that was a big challenge that a lot of the frontline workers had. I'm going to go to work and then I'm going to come home and possibly, expose my children or my wife or my parents to something that I got on the front line. And oh, by the way, I'm going to get that at what, minimum wage, right? So right. Yes, I do think, to point, the collective bargaining agreements, service labor acts, all of those things are going to look a little different when we come out of pandemic. And part of what I had to do as a leader to help my team understand is I went there with them. Mm-hmm. So instead of me sitting,
congratulations to you for doing that. That's a big girl. That's a big girl way of looking at it.
But again, it's one of these things from a leadership perspective, right? No one thinks that you have to think about that anytime, but you have got to be able to see what might be coming at you. To your point, have some empathy about it. At the end of the day, it's a whole leadership piece that who knew that was even going to be an issue, 12 months ago.
Exactly. And I'm not a point and click. I'm not the one that say, I'm going to point and that's what you're going to do. I'm one that says, we're going to do this together. If I'm asking you to do it, I'm going to do it with you. So, it's all going to change, and it all has changed. I watched the mindsets of people just different. Even the protests that we had last week down on Pennsylvania Avenue, when right before the fences went up. I have employees that are next to the White House, and they called and said, should I go home? And I said, wait a minute, where are you? They said, I'm in the building. I said, stay, right? Because if you stay inside of the building, you are a little bit more protected than going out and getting involved in something that could.
It's some chaos, right?
Exactly. That's what what we want to do. So from a leadership perspective, we've had to make pivotal points all throughout this. We've had to, be empathetic. We also had to be quite stern on some things. Understand you want to participate, but at the same token, you have a government clearance. There's some things you can do, some things you can't do, right? To point, we can donate money. So we started funds to be able to donate our funding to help the people that are on the front lines, helping to move the cause forward. So there's been a lot of different pivoting that we've had to do as leaders in order to make people working with us feel comfortable that they're not by themselves, be it going to work, staying home, or figuring out what their next steps are. So as we think about what I didn't think about in January, right? So I want to say this, I'm a thinker. I'm 360. I think that is my God-given talent, that I have the ability to see things before other things come to fruition. But you know what I didn't see? This, right? So it was I didn't see it. I didn't see the emotional impact to people. I remember telling someone, I just need a break because we've been running so fast, but I didn't expect a 3-month, no one can go to work break. So part of what I had to learn how to do to help my team is be more communicative. I'm so used to working and doing my job and understanding that people are out there doing their jobs that I had to figure out a way to touch base and touch people every day. And that is going back to understanding how to reinvent a business that was really touchy-feely. What do you do? Right? How do you do that? Do we start something? Well, we don't do e-commerce, but we certainly figured out a way to have online communications and webinars and conversations with our teammates, with our foundation, and with our clients every day. So it was a matter of thinking about what is the best way to get my voice out in the community, whatever community that is, and making sure that they feel good. And that is getting all the technology that I needed to do that, getting all the information that I needed to do that, and also listening to the voices that are around me, telling me what other people need. Remember, as leaders, we're only a part of the solution. Everybody else is the solution. So we'll get on the line and say, what else can we do? Well, we want to do this. Okay, well, we can't do that, but we can do this. So it's all been about a matter of us coming together collectively inside of this and putting it together. So you would have never told me March 7th that we were going to be in this pandemic, right? That we were going to shut down. But thankfully, I've surrounded myself by people that I've either given tools to, or they had them when they came in, and I've enhanced those tools of just forward thinking. What can we do? What else can we add? What funding do we need to accomplish it? Proven Management received a PPP. I have my reservations, but at the same token, it has been a way for us to keep the talent on board, and it's been a way for us to utilize. Hopefully we'll be able to utilize the funding to do other things like getting all the PPE that the employees need, the mask, hand sanitizer, and the gloves, and the cleaner, so that our employees can keep doing what they do every single day.
Yeah. Janice, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I was just thinking how important it is to listen. We've been very intentional, Dr. Cole and I, over the last year or so, bringing in younger women to work at NCNW as our colleagues. And we have these staff meetings, and now we go around the room, and before we get into what you're doing on the Zoom call, we talk about how are you on the Zoom? How are you feeling? How's your family? Is everybody okay? What's on your mind? What's your personal life looking like, to the extent you want to share it? And some of them proposed to us, what about doing some exercise Zooms? Now, I would have come up with 50 ideas about Zoom calls before I got to the sip and paint webinars that we're doing to help people stay mindful and calm through all of this, and doing dance lessons as part of our gatherings of our staff and colleagues. But if you listen with an open mind and a willing heart, you will hear ideas that you wouldn't have thought of yourself. And then that's when a leader has to remember that it's really about building a functioning team and respecting every member of that team, and making sure that that there's a way for people's ideas to get heard.
Yeah, I want to, before we close, because I think all of these, this is such a great conversation. I really want to keep this going. We've got to figure out a way to expand upon this, because I think conversations like this aren't being had everywhere. And I think it's important that we continue to share these steps. If you're looking at social media at all, you see a lot of confusion and a lot of things sort of going on that aren't necessarily in the vein of what the two of you as leaders are talking about. And I think we could use a lot more. I do see some of it, but I don't see it in the context of us really having these in-depth conversations with each other as women, as Black women, as professionals, as homemakers, as volunteers, across the board, as students. There's just so much that we can share and gift to one another. And so with that, what I want to do is give you an opportunity. I want to share how people can get in touch with you. Can you give us sort of your top, 1 to 3 points that you'd want to leave with everyone as we talk about being resilient as a leader in this time?
Absolutely, I can. So I would say the first thing that I would tell people is that it's okay to feel emotion in here, although as a leader, you may not always want to project it out. So the one thing that's been helpful for me is finding a peer group of leaders that I can feel free and safe in, that I can express that emotion, but then I lead my team with precision, if that makes sense. I think the other side is to remember that we don't know everything and to continue to learn and research. There are a lot of blogs and information that you can get about what to do, how to prepare, not necessarily in a pandemic, but just preparing in life so that you would have the financial stability or the calm or the perseverance, whatever it is, the adjective that you need to get you from point A to point B. I would tell you to continue to research it and do that. And I think the other side of it is surround yourself by people who are comfortable being led and who look for you to lead, and then that in you becomes very natural. It's easy for me to lead a team that wants to have a leader, that respects me as a leader, and that values me as a leader.
Finish your thoughts?
Well, I want to say, first of all, to Danita, that was very well put. I think that I've already said, focus, be willing to be innovative, listen. Don't assume that you know all the answers, because nobody does. And focus on what's good for the entire team, and generally it'll be okay.
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining us today. I'm especially proud to have a conversation with two leaders leading companies that are African-American led, for the most part, African-American employed, doing the work that needs to be done. And I'm so proud of both of you, and just so thankful to be able to have this conversation and for you to give me a glimpse and to give all of our audience a glimpse as to not only the things that you go through day to day, but your experience and the wisdom that you have garnered as part of your experience and as part of this particular pandemic that we're all navigating at this point. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Oh.
Your questions really sparked some thinking on my part. So it was fun working through the questions. Thank you.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's almost like, what do we do? And sometimes you just get so busy running the business that you don't even think about what you're already doing. So I appreciate the thought-provoking questions as well.
Oh,
yes.
It's my pleasure. I want us to, as women in particular, we have so much to give in these spaces. We don't always hear from women who are running organizations and companies like the two of you are. And so I think it's important for younger entrepreneurs, millennial entrepreneurs, emerging entrepreneurs, mature entrepreneurs like myself to really be able to hear that level of wisdom, and to get a sense of, it will be all right, that you just gotta, to some degree, be empathetic, trust your gut, lean on understanding, whether it's through your faith or whether it's through leadership lessons that you go into, really kind of go back to those and not feel afraid to be able to share the softer side of leadership is what I'm going to call it. Because we know how to do the nuts and bolts of it. But as women, we have that ability to transition into that side of leadership that is critical to helping people move themselves and their lives forward. So I just want to give a big shout out to both of you, and I wish you continued success. Please tell Dr. Cole hello from me.
I sure will.
Yeah, Janice and Dr. Cole are both my sorors, Delta Sigma Theta, so I'm going to throw that out there today. So I thank you as Delta women for also being there for me. And Danita, the work you're doing, I know we didn't really share this story, but Danita helped to move the Obama family out of the White House during inauguration. That was a huge moment for a Black-owned company to be able to have not only the fact that you're a women-owned business and that you're in logistics, number one, but to have that that special contract to be able to do that is really important.
Thank you. It was one of my highlights.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You got to come speak to our series about how you built that business. I'll be calling you.
Listen, I would love to. One of my big passions is telling women, specifically, and African American women specifically, if that's the word,
Right.
How to run it. I think when we were coming up, I didn't have a mentor in that nature. They didn't look like us, right? So people that wanted me to be a puppet, people who wanted me to do X, Y, and Z. And I say that to say that was the hard side of it. The strong side of it was tapping into myself, knowing I can do it. So if I can help any young woman to build their business and any tips I could possibly give them, it is free for me to do so. So let me know anytime. My contact information, I'll be more than willing to give it. Okay. So thank you.
All right.
I'm glad I pulled the two of you together as well. So you get the network as well moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I just want to share with everyone our virtual session next week will be a repeat of what we've done, but I want to give everyone an opportunity, particularly if you're a restaurant owner or you might be driving for Uber in support of Uber Eats. I want you to have an opportunity to go back, listen to the webinar around boosting your restaurant revenue. It is so critical at this time that we help our Black restaurants in particular who really relied on physical contact to be able to have some alternatives to be able to boost and build their revenue. So as always, please go, if you're looking at our webinars, they all are available on demand at usblackchambers.org/webinars. And then for up-to-date information on the CARES Act and navigating through this COVID environment, please visit us at usblackchambers.org/CARES-Act / to get more information. We try to stay on top of the latest things that are going on to make sure that you're as well informed to make the right decisions for your company. So with that, thank you from all of us. Please be healthy and please be safe.